Hey everyone, it's White Cross, and you have joined me for 90% Silver for Advanced Stackers Silver Dollar video number 2, where we're going to be talking about the physical divergence between 90% silver dollars and those subsidiary issues, the dime, the quarter, and the half dollar. In the first video in this series, we talked about the mental and psychological divergence. Now we're going to be talking about the physical divergence. If you are new to the channel, I appreciate you spending some time with me here today. Hopefully, you'll be as informed as you are entertained. And if you are a returning subscriber to this channel, thank you guys as always for being with me on another video looking at the viewer count. And we've got about 600 subscribers now. It's mind-boggling to think, and I genuinely appreciate it, especially you folks who join me when we are premiering the videos. It's always a thrill to see the video being displayed for the first time to the people that are interested in this type of material. So thank you, subscribers. I really appreciate it. If you are new to the channel, I like to begin each of my videos with a simple disclaimer. I'm not a financial analyst or a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also like to work in some terms, some concepts that we can apply later to the meat of the subject of the videos. And this video, we will be talking about two of them. The first concept is the concept of a cull. That's C-U-L-L. What is a cull? A particularly important term when it comes to silver dollars. A cull is a coin with condition issues that are bad enough that it is no longer considered numismatically collectible. So we're talking about coins that are bent, that are holed, that have really bad gouges in them, that are badly cleaned, that are doctored. We'll talk about coin doctoring a little bit later in these series as we get deeper into it. But I've got some examples of what are kind of traditionally seen as culls here. These are really, really worn Morgan and peace dollars. Now, I find some of these to be very interesting. Some of these pieces tell a history, and after all, that's what we coin collect for in the first place. We like the history. These pieces, you can see that they have a history. These pieces were probably pocket pieces. That means they were probably carried in the pocket of somebody for many, many years. This type of wear comes after decades, not just a year or two. But these are examples of some of the more attractive culls out there. Culls sometimes have those huge gouges, are bent really bad, have holes all the way through them. They are no longer collectible as a coin, the kind of thing that a coin collector would want, but they still have some value. They are still somewhat interesting, and they still have some silver. So a cull, a coin with condition issues that are so bad that it is no longer really considered to be a collectible coin. Different people grade culls differently. My local dealers are pretty generous with them. They would grade a coin like this. This is a Morgan dollar that has been cleaned, and it's obviously very worn as well, but it's not bad. I would say that this is still a cull, but it's maybe a better quality cull. Cull, C-U-L-L, and we'll talk about culls a little bit later as well. The other term I wanted to bring into this conversation is the idea of a VAM. VAM, V-A-M. What that stands for is Leroy Van Allen and George Mallis. These were two numismatists who studied coins, in particular Morgan dollars, and they realized that each Morgan dollar die had defining characteristics to them. Coins are made when two dies, that is the piece of metal that has the design carved into it, are struck together with a coin blank between the two dies. And that is what produces a coin. So Van Allen and Mallis realized that each of these dies have particular design characteristics. They are often very minute. They can be very tiny, but they can also be quite obvious. And they are an interesting area of study for silver dollars in particular. People are studying VAMs and other coin series as well, but it's really mostly Morgan dollars and peace dollars. every single Morgan and Peace dollar struck with dies, and everybody are there numismatists that are out there that are studying, trying to find out what those dies are. And for the most part, they have them mapped really well. You can tell with a fair degree of confidence what dies were used to strike each of the Morgan or Peace dollars that you will encounter, as long as they're not so badly worn that you can't really see them anymore. VAM. And I'll leave a link down below to kind of the website that characterizes and categorizes all of the VAMs that we know about. Some are more interesting than others. Some of them are really exciting, and we'll talk about a couple of those later on in this video as well. So the last video in this series, we talked about those mental or psychological differences between the idea of collecting coins versus stacking silver dollars. What separates 90% silver dollars mentally, psychologically, from those subsidiary coins, the dime, the quarter, and the half. This video, we're going to talk a little bit more about that physical divergence. What separates the dollars from those subsidiary coins on a physical level, both in terms of purity and size and weight, all those physical characteristics that come into play when we're talking about stacking precious metals. So the difference in weight, 90% and silver dollars, subsidiary coinage and silver dollars. Did you know that silver dollars are actually heavier dollar per dollar face value than the subsidiary coins? It's true. A silver dollar, typical silver dollar like this one, 90% silver, 10% copper, 0.7734 of a troy ounce, or 24.05 grams of pure silver. Now compare that, 24.05 grams of silver, to a silver half dollar. A silver half dollar, 0.3617 of a troy ounce. But remember, there's 2 half dollars per face value of dollar, which means that they only weigh 0.7234 of a troy ounce. Dollar, 0.7734, half dollars, 0.7234. And that is echoed with the other subsidiary coinage. There are 4 quarters to a face value dollar of silver quarters. Each one of those 0.1808 times 4, 0.7232. A silver dime, 0.0723 times 10 for that face value dollar, 0.723. So there is more weight, more silver in a silver dollar than there are a dollar face value of any of those subsidiary coinage. Why? Why is it like that? Well, it has a lot to do with the Coinage Act of 1853, and I'm not going to get into the deep details of that. But the long and short is that this was a period of bimetallism in the United States when we used both gold coins and silver coins in day-to-day transactions. That was our money. That's what we spent. And in that period of time, there was suddenly a lot of gold coming in from the California gold rush, and also there was a similar gold rush in Australia in 1851. And there was so much gold coming into the country and globally that it actually decreased the ratio of gold to silver. It had been around 16 to 1, so 16 silver dollars to one $20 gold piece, if you want to think about it in those terms. But the influx of gold from these gold rushes dropped it down to 15.45 to 1. And what that meant is that silver became more valuable. And when silver became more valuable, it suddenly became profitable to ship silver coins overseas, to sell them as their silver value was worth more than their face value. So in 1853, in an effort to try to stop this, the senators in Washington, the representatives in Washington, passed legislation that was designed to counteract this by lowering the amount of silver value in those subsidiary coinage, in the dimes, the quarters, and the half dollars. But they were reluctant to mess around with the silver dollar. They felt that it was really kind of the defining coin of the United States, and they were kind of right in a way, and they declined to include the silver dollar. So the silver dollar maintained the same weight that it had been since about 1840, I believe. But in 1853, they dropped the amount of silver included in the subsidiary coinage just a little bit, about 7%. And that stayed with us. That is the way that silver coins continue to be made going forward. It was originally supposed to be kind of a temporary measure to stop coins from going out of the country, but it became kind of the standard, and it worked. The amount of silver dropped down to the point where it was no longer profitable to ship these coins overseas to melt them for their silver value. Therefore, they continued to circulate, and that became kind of the norm. So the Coinage Act of 1853, as an aside, there are a lot of coin acts in this period of time, and they all have to do with those inflationary pressures that we talked about in the last video. Should gold be our currency? Should silver be our currency? Should both gold and silver be our currency? And there were lots of push and pull, and it's a fascinating journey if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But that's not really what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the physical divergence. What makes those silver dollars more interesting from a stacking point of view than that subsidiary coinage? So, Coinage Act of 1853 reduces the amount of silver content for those subsidiaries, but not for the silver dollar. So the silver dollar, face value of a silver dollar, has more silver in it than the face value of a dollar of dimes, a dollar of quarters, or a dollar of half dollars. Is it significant? It's significant, but it's not a huge amount. I believe that the difference really comes down to about 1.5 to 2 grams of silver more in a silver dollar than there would be in a dollar's worth of face value of the subsidiary coinage. But it's something, right? That is something that makes it different. That is something that makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more valuable, and that's kind of the way it was supposed to be in the first place. So, the Coinage Act of 1853 reduces the amount of silver in the subsidiary coinage while keeping the same amount of silver in the silver dollars. So that's one physical divergence from the 90% silver dollars compared to those subsidiary coins. But there's also a difference in premium, and part of that is probably driven by that physical difference in the amount of silver, but part of it is also probably driven by the psychological, the mental aspects that we talked about in the last video, those characteristics that just kind of make us appreciate silver dollars a little bit more. Got some quick examples I just researched before I started shooting this video, and I wanted to share them with you. So the current value of silver in a typical 90% silver dollar, like these peace dollars here, as I'm filming this video, about $18.31. Remember, a silver dollar, 0.7734 of a troy ounce, so of pure silver. So about $18.31 per silver dollar in silver value. APMEX, that's an online retailer of bullion products that I've mentioned many times before, has average circulated Morgan dollars right now for about $38 a piece. These are average circulated, and I'm going to be honest with you, my average circulated probably a little bit nicer than most companies' average circulated. These are pieces that I have picked myself over time, and I'm pretty discerning when it comes to these kinds of things, but these are some examples. These are probably XFAU on the Sheldon scale. Remember, coins are graded on a scale of 1 to 70, so these would probably be 40, 45 out of 70. Probably a little bit nicer than what you'd see from most online retailers, but APMEX has average circulated Morgans $38.99 a piece. $18.31 worth of silver, $38.99 to buy a Morgan dollar. The peace dollars, a little bit less expensive. Again, these are probably slightly nicer examples than you might find from most retailers, but these are examples, again, on that Sheldon scale, maybe 45 to 50 on that scale of 1 to 70, $34.99. So $38.99 for the Morgans, $34.99 for the peace dollars. Keep in mind that when I'm quoting prices like this, we're talking about a market that fluctuates wildly from day to day, from week to week, from month to month. So Just because I'm quoting these prices here today does not mean that you'll be able to pick them up for this price, or they may even be a lot less expensive by the time you're watching this video. It's just to give you an illustration. $18.31 worth of silver, $38.99 or $35.99 or $34.99 rather for the peace dollars. That's how much of a premium you're talking about. So it's about a $20 per coin premium. That's a lot of money, but compare that to a dollar face value of Washington quarters right now. Each one of those has about $4.28 in worth of silver. So a face value dollar would contain 4 quarters, and that would equal about $17.12. So just over 17 times the face value, or $17.12 rather, for face values worth of dollars, worth of silver in a silver quarters. APMEX has average circulated quarters, a dollar face value for $31.34. JM Bullion, another online retailer who also sells these types of products, $32.67. So do some quick math, back of the napkin kind of math. A silver dollar, $38.99. Silver quarters, $31.34. That's a pretty substantial difference. You're talking about a pretty big difference in premium between the subsidiary coinage of a dollar's worth of quarters, a dollar worth of dimes, or a dollar's worth of half dollars versus those Morgan and peace dollars. It has a lot to do with supply and demand, but it also has a fair amount to do with those psychological factors, and also a little bit about that physical characteristics, the fact that the silver dollar weighs more than a dollar's worth of those subsidiary pieces would. So premiums, another way that we're talking about a little bit of a divergence between the subsidiary coinage and those 90% silver dollars. The other point of divergence that I wanted to talk about, and this is really kind of the first time we've really kind of dive headfirst into the idea of numismatics, but I think at some point it's important to understand that there is a difference between stacking silver and collecting coins. And it's, for me, looking back at 30 or 40 years of doing this, it's kind of an easy separation for me to see. I can kind of tell the difference between the two, but I'm not sure that's really a good thing. And this is, again, one of those times when I want to emphasize that everybody's journey into physical precious metals is different. This is really something that you get to decide for yourself. Make these decisions for yourself. Make this something that you want. Don't necessarily follow the opinion of anyone. That's the beauty of this. This is up to you. For me, I can see that difference, that divergence between stacking and collecting, and I lean a little bit more into the collecting side. If you watch my videos from day one, I consider myself to be a numismatist, a coin collector, far before I ever thought of myself as any kind of precious metals expert. And I use air quotes when I said that, because nobody's really an expert in this kind of field, especially as quickly as it's evolving. I am just somebody that has always been involved with it, and it's fascinating to me and continues to be 30 or 40 years later. I see myself as a coin collector first, but I also really enjoy physical precious metals, so I tend to apply a lot of the characteristics that I use when collecting coins in the field of stacking precious metals. To me, it's an extension of coin collecting. So, two divergent paths. Are you going to be a silver stacker, or are you going to be a numismatist? There is no right answer, there's no wrong answer, and I actually do a fair amount of both, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you decide that you are just interested in stacking silver and you don't give a hoot about the numismatic side of coins, then I have some ideas that I wanted to put into your head just to see if you are on the same page that I am, and maybe they'll kind of help you as you move through your physical precious metal stacking involving 90% silver dollars. And remember, there are significant differences between silver dollars and those subsidiary coinage. So if you want to stack 90% silver dollars, that's great. If you want to avoid them because it's a little bit more complicated, because there are higher costs involved, because condition tends to matter, all those things that we've talked about in these two videos, there is nothing wrong with avoiding silver dollars. But I do think that they're a very interesting side of silver stacking, and they certainly are an interesting side of American numismatics. So, for stacking, some ideas that I want to put in your head if you're just interested in stacking. Condition is important, even if you're just stacking. I am not a fan of culls. We've talked about culls earlier in this video, and these are some of those examples that we talked about. Now, again, I'm coming from a numismatic point of view, so I have a little bit of an opinion about this, and that is there are some times when coins are so heavily damaged that they're not doing you any good to stack. Is it better to have culls than to have nothing? Sure. But in my experience, the difference in price between a cull and a coin that's just good to very good, on that Sheldon scale somewhere around 10 or 15 out of 70, it's not that big of a difference in price. I would rather have something that I could be proud of, that I thought was really a benefit to my stack, rather than just something that was there for the sake of being there. So condition is important. Try to avoid heavily cleaned pieces. Again, this is an example of a dollar that's been cleaned. We will do some videos a little bit later on coin condition and how you can tell that this piece has been cleaned. But two of the kind of the factors that are most obvious to me as I'm looking at this piece is that the quality of the shine for this, the quality of the brightness of that coin, is consistent all the way across it. It doesn't differ from one side to the other. It's all kind of a solid color of shine. That sparkle is gone. One of the other ways you can tell, and it's a little bit more difficult on a coin that's been used as much as this one has, is that there is no cartwheel luster. And I'll just give you an example. This is a coin with cartwheel luster. You see how those, the brightness kind of follows it around almost like bicycle spokes? That's called cartwheel. And when a coin has been heavily cleaned, that cartwheel disappears. It doesn't necessarily mean that a coin without cartwheel has been cleaned, and you can have coins that still exhibit cartwheel luster that have been cleaned. But it's a good barometer to whether or not a coin has been cleaned. This coin doesn't have that shine that follows it around. It still has a little bit of shine, but it doesn't make its way around the outside of the coin the same way that a coin that hasn't been cleaned does. So, step number one, if you're just interested in stacking, condition does matter. Go for the pieces that are a little bit nicer. The next thing is that there are rare, instead of culls, spend your time looking for those VF to XF coins, and that's what I had here. So, spend some time. Try to find pieces that are a little bit nicer. Sometimes you'll find a dealer who puts them all into a tray, puts them all into a bin. Take a few minutes. Take your loop with you. Take the pieces that have the best amount of hair showing, that they have the feathers on the breast of the eagle on the backside of the coin. That is an indication that the coin has had less wear to it. See those feathers on the wing? The more feathers, the more detail you can see, generally speaking, the less wear there is. So, use White Cross's choice. Ask yourself, do I want a piece that is this worn down, or do I want a piece that has a little bit more detail to it? Learn eye appeal. Eye appeal is kind of an enigmatic, a difficult to pin down condition where a coin just has that little extra pop. And this one is a little bit more esoteric. It's a little bit more difficult to tell. I had this example in the last video. This coin has got some really bright cartwheel luster, and it's bright white. We would call this a white coin because there is just no tone, no anything to it. Some people really like these. I like my coins with a little bit more character to it. This is an example of a coin that's got a little bit of natural tone to it, and this one just has a little bit better eye appeal. You don't have a question as to whether or not this coin has been cleaned because it's not bright white and it's got that cartwheel luster, but it also just has a little bit of extra tone to it, a little bit of extra color. Now, this is really where your personal preference comes into play. You may like a coin that is bright white. You may like a coin that's got a little bit of tone, a little bit of color to it. It's your personal preference, and that's, again, one of the beautiful things about this. So, learn eye appeal. Learn learn what makes a coin attractive, and you can just try it out for yourself. If you're looking at one of those trays in your dealer shop, what coin appeals to you the most? And that's a good beginning to the concept of eye appeal. And if there's interest, we'll do a video specifically about eye appeal. Again, a personal preference. It's really personal choice. But there are characteristics to look for in eye appeal. In my experience, Morgan dollars tend to sell for a higher premium than peace dollars. Peace dollars for the longest time were kind of unloved. And I think it has probably something to do with that romanticism that we talked about in the last video. We were talking about something that spurs the imagination. The Morgan dollars just have a little bit more of that than the peace dollars do. So in my experience, and obviously the examples that we said before about the premiums that are being charged on a website like AppMex right now, a smaller premium for the peace dollar is about $4 compared to the premiums for the Morgan dollars. Use that to your advantage. If you are on a budget, but you want 90% silver dollars, look at the peace dollars. If you've got a little bit more cash and you are thinking of these Morgan dollars as kind of a supplement to, or even a replacement of 1 ounce silver rounds, then maybe think about the Morgan dollars. Condition is important, but also the style of coin can be important. If you're going to be looking for peace dollars, it's my experience that really high quality peace dollars can still be found in those dealers' trays, in those dealers' bins, with very little premium. So if you're looking at condition and quality of the coin, you can, if you spend some time and you're careful, you can find these coins that are maybe even uncirculated technically. That would be on that Sheldon scale 60 and above. These may not quite qualify for it. We would probably call these sliders back in the day. That means they're probably a 55 to a 58, maybe a 60. But a lot of dealers have that mental idea of peace dollars not being quite as valuable, like we just talked about. And because of that, you can find higher quality peace dollars versus the lower quality Morgan dollar. Personal preference, but sometimes it's nice to have a really beautiful coin. And if you can pick them up for the same price when there's not as much of a premium, then maybe that's a good option too. And I like to think of all of this as a long game. What do I mean by long game? Well, some of the pieces that you see here in front of you, I bought 15, 20, 25 years ago. And I was fortunate that I was picking up a lot of these when silver was $8 or $10 an ounce. And often I was buying these pieces for $20 or $25 a piece. I think you probably saw some of the prices on, for example, on this one, $23. That's what I paid my dealer when I bought this one. So, and I probably got a discount on it too. I probably was able to talk him down a couple dollars in price. Again, $36 for a BU Morgan dollar back in the day. So it's a long game. It's very easy when you're talking about stacking physical precious metals, and a lot of people get it in their head that they need to have all of this all at once. I'm not a fan of that. I'm really not. This is something that has taken me nearly 40 years to acquire. And it's a long game, so take your time. Unless you really, really feel like you need to go deep into silver or gold really quickly. And we've talked about the pitfalls of doing that with dollar cost averaging, with divisibility, with taking some serious losses in case you have to sell. Think of this as a long game. Enjoy that hunt. 1 or 2 or 3 nice Morgan or peace dollars a month is still a substantial amount. So take your time. Over the course of a year, you're talking about a roll. Over the course of 5 years, you've got several rolls. And that's a nice way to think of it. This is an enjoyable pastime if you take your time and really pick out those pieces that appeal to you. Numismatic. So we just talked about stacking from a stacking point of view. What's the divergence with numismatics? With numismatics, and again, numismatics is simply the study of coins, the collecting of coins. It's a different ball game. It's the same playing field, but it's a different ball game. Condition really matters when you're talking about numismatics. Most collectors that I know don't collect coins like the Morgan dollars or the peace dollars with a condition less than a 60. Now again, scale of 1 to 70 on the Sheldon scale, anything 60 and above is considered uncirculated, but most coins that are graded 60 are problematic. And by problematic, I mean that they often have issues. They are bag marked. Let me see if I can find an example, and I'll kind of talk you through it here. This is an example of a Morgan dollar that has been graded by the American Numismatic Association Certification Service. Annex is what we call it, and this is a small white slab. This is a vintage slab, a vintage holder. We will definitely get into holders and slabs a little bit later, but this is just an example of an MS-60 coin graded by Annex. It's a fine coin, there's nothing wrong with it, but it has a fair number of bag marks to it, and it just doesn't have the same eye appeal. Well, this one's kind of a nicer one, so again, the problem with being into this field for so many years is that even my bad examples are often somewhat nice, but take my word for it, this coin is not as nice as this coin. This is a 63, this is a 60. So my point was that when you're talking about collecting coins, especially when you're collecting Morgan silver dollars or peace dollars, most collectors that I know don't want coins less than a 60, except for those really rare examples. And I'm not a collector of Morgan dollars, I'm a stacker of Morgan dollars. So I don't have any of those really rare examples. But to be honest with you, most collectors that I know don't really want a 60, and 62 grade is a little bit of a strange one, as is 61. These are uncommonly seen grades, and they usually are an indicator that there is something amiss with the coin. Most collectors that I know collect 63 and above, and the serious collectors that I know collect 65s and above. So anything that is MS65, kind of an old school term, we consider those gem, brilliant uncirculated. Gem BU coins 65 and above, that's what serious collectors really collect. So they're looking for those 63 and above, they're looking for 65s. They also look for the rare and scarce dates and those rare mint marks. Again, I'm not a huge collector of Morgans. I do have some that are kind of nicer, better quality, better condition, and more scarce dates. But this is the divergence between numismatic and stacking. A collector is going to be looking for those rare dates. They're going to be looking for those rare mint marks. And they often, not always, try to collect the entire series. That is, they are collecting every single date, every single mint mark. And some of the more serious, more dedicated, strictly numismatic folks out there, they even collect those VAMs that we talked about earlier. Remember, that was one of the concepts we talked about at the beginning of the video. Leroy Van Allen and George Mallis came up with a collection of those dies. They study every single die that was used to strike the Morgan and peace dollars. And there are more interesting VAMs for some of the more interesting coins out there. I'm going to put a picture here of one of the more popular VAMs. This one's called the Hot Lips, and this is a Morgan dollar. And you can see right off the bat, you can tell why this is an interesting coin to own. This is a VAM. But there are other VAMs as well. And the example that I showed a little bit earlier, this is VAM 19 of the 1896 Philadelphia strike Morgan dollars. It is a top 100 VAM, and that was a collection of the kind of the more interesting VAMs. These are the ones that are a little bit more exciting. VAM 19, it has, when they were cutting the die for this particular die, they moved the Janvier machine. They somehow duplicated the 8 in the 1896 date down there. And I'm going to bring it as close as I can, and I doubt you'll still be able to see it, but right below the 18, right before it hits the border, there is a tiny little 8. There's the top of the 8, and if you can see it, that's great. I'm having trouble focusing on it, so I'm not sure that you're going to be able to see it. But right there at those denticles, those are those little dots that go all the way around the outside of the coin, there is an extra 8, the top of an 8. That is visible with the naked eye if you really take a good look at it, and that's what makes that a VAM. We know for a fact that that is a particular die that was used in Morgan dollars. So not only do collectors collect by date, by year, by mint mark, they also often collect by VAMs. This is an example of a beautiful VAM that I have. This is the 1921 peace dollar. 1921 peace dollar, the first year that they made peace dollars. This was a high relief coin. They really wanted to make these stand out and look fantastic, and they used extra pressure and extra preparation for the dies, and they made a coin that really stands out from normal peace dollars. Let's see if I can give you an example. This is a 1923 versus a 21. The 21 just has that deep dish sloped sides going down into it. This is a VAM. So not only is this one of the, well, it's the first year that they made the peace dollars. This is also an older PCGS slab, and this little green dot here means that it has been accepted and agreed on with the CAC service, coin service that actually looks at older slabs and either agrees or disagrees with those the assigned grades. And we'll talk about CAC a little bit later, and not necessarily in this series, but in the next video or some video a little bit later. This die, we know for a fact that this die that struck this peace dollar was actually the die that struck the proof versions of this coin. There were proof coins struck in 1921 of the peace dollar, and as soon as they got done striking them, and they did not make very many of them, they turned those dies over to general circulation strikes. So not only is it the first year issued, that was actually struck with the dies that were used to make the proof dollars of this year. It's a very interesting VAM. It's VAM 1H, and it is also from the top list of VAMs for the peace dollars. This is from the Elite 30 of the VAMs. So the separation, the divergence between what makes stacking versus numismatics, again, I like to blend the two. I don't go for dollars older than the Morgan dollars, and this is kind of an explanation of what I do. This is how I see this. I don't go for coins older than the Morgan dollars. That would be the seeded dollars, and if you want to go back and look at the last video, we talked about all the dollars that preceded it. I don't have very many culls. I have intentionally not got that many culls in my stack. The reason I've got a few of these is because I like that ghostly look, and I like the history that came along with it. But I've got 10 or 15 culls, and that's it. And I've probably got several hundred Morgan and peace dollars. I like hand-selected pieces. And the reason I've got this selection here is when, back in the day, I had an opportunity to go into my local coin shops, I would go through their Morgan dollars and their peace dollars, and I would select those pieces that really had that eye appeal. So not only was I buying rolls of circulated ones, but I would also look through the inventory that they had of uncirculated pieces. And I would often buy these single uncirculated pieces for just a small premium over the value of the silver. Again, we talked about this is kind of what I was paying for these pieces back in the day, a few dollars over and above the value of the silver included. I have a few rolls of brilliant uncirculated dollars. This is a great example. This is an entire roll of 1923 peace dollars. Every single one of these is uncirculated. They are probably graded 63, 64, maybe even some 65s in there. I didn't pay $135 for it. That was the price when I got it. But I didn't pay a whole lot more than that. So I do have rolls, and whenever I could find brilliant uncirculated rolls that did not have a significantly high premium, I added those to my stack. My suggestions, when we're talking about these kinds of rolls, look for that grade. Cartwheel luster does matter. Look for a little bit of tone. Don't be afraid of some bag marks. That's just an indication that the coins clinked together inside the canvas bags after they left the mint. But what you don't want to see if you are kind of doing this hybrid approach, try to avoid coins that are heavily worn. Try to avoid coins that have those gouges in them. You don't really want those, and if you spend your time, you should be able to find these pieces that don't have them. Look for tone. I'm a big fan of tone, but it has to be original tone. And again, there are some examples that are out there that have been artificially toned. You see the tone all the way around the rim of the coin. It can be attractive. The reverse of this has a nice champagne colored tone. The second it doesn't look attractive to you, put it away. Don't pick up that one. Look for the attractiveness, look for that attractive eye appeal, look for the tone. But if it doesn't spark your interest, then it's maybe not the coin for you. Look for cleaning. I am a big detractor, or cleaning is a huge detraction from me. I do not like clean coins. Again, that's from my years and years and years as a numismatist. Clean coins are not very appealing to me, and it can be one of the most difficult things to discern. The difference between a clean coin and a non-clean coin can be slight. Spend some time, and I'll put a video out there if we think that there's enough interest in the difference between cleaned and non-clean coins. Look for that small premium. Spend your time and look at, if you're going to go to a local dealer, if you're going to go to a coin shop, find those pieces that don't have a very significant premium. Add them to your stack. There's no reason for you to have culls if you can buy uncirculated coins for very near the same price. And I'm talking $1 or $2 or $3 more. This is what I've done over time, and this is what has enabled me to have nice coins in my stack. And some additional thoughts as we wrap up this video, already at 40 minutes, and I apologize and thank you again for sticking with me if you've stuck with me through the end of this one. One thing I wanted to bring in as a possibility, this is something that I still feel is somewhat overlooked in the world of stacking and coin collecting, and that is modern silver commemorative dollars. So these are some examples of some of the silver dollars that the US Mint has released in the last 30 or 40 years. This one in particular is a really nice example. This is from the Olympics, and this is 1988. It's an uncirculated coin. This is the Mint's original package that it came in, and it came in one of these sets. And we've talked about those sets before in the Rookie Gold Buyers series, and I'll put a link down to that video down below. But these coins typically sell for a very small premium, and a lot of them have very small mintages. Not all of them, but some of them do. And I've cautioned before, look for those pieces that have the lowest mintage. Not all the time will a proof have the lowest mintage, and this is an example of the proof version of this coin. You can see that black and white cameo versus the uncirculated version, which is just more of a silvery gray color. Those proof pieces often have a higher mintage than the uncirculated ones do. Why am I suggesting these? Have you ever looked at an old coin book that came out years and years ago and just thought, what if I could buy those coins at these prices? I would back the truck up and I would buy so many of those coins if I could just go back in the day. This is a way that you can kind of do that, because these coins are kind of sleepers. Not all of them, but some of them with those really small mintages. And I have some examples here. I just wanted to give you a quick example. This is a red book, and this is the 1976 red book, and these are Morgan dollars. So look at the prices for those uncirculated there. That's this column over here. $11. $45. These are for uncirculated coins. This is the prices that these Morgan dollars in 1976 were in that price range. A 1976 going back 40 years would be about the end of the peace dollars. So the difference between 1976 and the release of the peace dollars is the same amount of time between today and the first releases of these modern silver dollars. So it's been 35, 40 years since these have come out. And you can buy these pieces at those prices right now. Often dealers discount them to the point where they are literally just the silver value. Just an idea, just an option if you decide that you want to stack 90% silver dollars. Don't just look at those peace dollars. Don't just look at the Morgan dollars. Give a look at those modern silver commemorative dollars. And remember, starting in 2018, 2019, they are 999 silver, not just 90%. Just another point to make. One of my longest videos. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of it. This is 90% silver for advanced stackers, the Silver Dollars Volume 2, where we talked about the physical divergence between the 90% silver dollars and those subsidiary pieces, the dime, the quarter, and the half dollar. If you have any questions about this scope that we talked about today, I know it was a lot to take in. By all means, leave a message down below and I'll try to address it as soon as I can. If you have questions or suggestions about another video that you'd like to make me, that you would like for me to make along the same lines as these two videos have been, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of physical precious metals.